course, there are others there. You see 1994s, and those came along later. We're not going to talk much about those. But we talk about these. But here, among the 1890s, in that strategic plan that they put together a few years ago, they talking about developing what we call making some bold transformation. In other words, the outline or the roadmap that they set out for the 1890 system. 1890 system. Prairie View being a part of that, of course, says what? At the top of the list, some of the things that we talk about here. In our social systems group, we talk about quality of life. What is the quality of life? As a growing up in rural America, when I go back now to my hometown, and I realize the quality of life, I thought it was bad then. It's probably worse now. Oh, you hear the president, you hear our president Biden talk about infrastructure and infrastructure this, and how do we rebuild capacity? How do we rebuild America? And when we think in terms of all of those things that make life easier for us, and a lot of things that we experience perhaps living in a suburb, living in Houston, a very prosperous area, but there's so many areas of our society, which is an issue of mine, is that quality of life. What is quality of life? You can define that however you want to, but for me, it's the creature comforts of life. Having the creature comforts of life, having the amenities, having access to programs, having access to resources, having opportunity for a good education, having opportunity to make a living, and to be able to live at some reasonable standard. Those are some things. What about health challenges and things like that? We know, particularly among the unserved and underserved population, that we probably have more health challenges. We've just experienced going through COVID, and every day when I talk to people about COVID, it seemed to be disproportionately impacting some of the lower segments of society. Why? You think about COVID and how it's impacting those. I can go home and isolate in my house. But you go home and you're some house where you got a big family, maybe 12 or 15 people living in a small house. Where are you going to isolate if you have a small house? You don't have the luxury of having your own bedroom. Okay? You might live in an apartment. You might live in a small place and things like that. Food security. We developed a food security system. So many people going to bed hungry at night, not having enough to eat, even here in America, in a prosperous country. These are issues that we want to talk about. And then, of course, the protection of our natural resources, protection of our environment. They talked about that. But the question becomes is that how do we get there? How do we get there? We're going to talk about some strategic initiatives. We're going to talk about some strategic action strategies. You can talk about things, but if you don't have a strategy to get there, okay, it's all for naught. A lot of people have a good idea. I said, I can have a dream, but if I don't have some action steps and some milestones that I can look at and that I can measure as I go along the way, how am I going to know when I reach there? It's like setting out on a journey, don't know. You said, I want to go to Chicago. Nowadays, you have your GPS working, right? Okay? GPS, these young folks, if that GPS doesn't work, they will never get to Chicago. In my day, somebody just told you, you head north. How do you know which way north is? On what highway did you get on? Okay, but nowadays you understand it's all relative based on your generation and when you grow up. But think about trying to do something and don't know how you're going to get it. Yeah, I'd like to do that, but you have no strategy for making it happen. Our job is to be able to talk about that. Our job is to be able to put some things in place. It's going to require partnering. We live in a society today where we can't go solo. We live in a society today where ever more and more and more it's going to take group action. It's going to take some collective effort. At our recent Ag Econ meeting, the incoming president of AA, Madhu Khanna, in her speech talks about the future. She says we're at a crossroads in our society, and everything we do going forward is going to require, in most cases, it's going to require not solo action, but group action, multidisciplinary, even what she called transdisciplinary, because the problems are immense and they require so much things that we need to work around. It's going to require some moral and financial support. It's going to collaboration, and it requires teamwork, of course. Can't go do it alone. So how do we put all this together? Now, this is what I put together, these four things here. Right after I came from that meeting in January of 2020, I wrote these down. And these are the 4 points that I want to talk about today. Develop a synergistic relationship between the College of Agriculture academic program and faculty, the CEP, and other PV faculty with respect to research. How do we integrate all these together? You know, we can talk about how we work together and we do this. We do research. Okay, we do impactful research. And then extension can talk about we deliver research-based information. That's fine and dandy. That's fine and good. Okay, and then we can go over to our academic program and we can teach our classes. When I go over and teach my classes in Ag Econ, I can say, okay, here's what we do. But there's no connection. There's no connection across line. We're not talking to each other. We're not planning together. We're not working together. And sometimes we could be missing the boat. We might be missing a grand opportunity, okay, when we fail to do that. I'm going to talk about that a little more in a second. Some strategic realignment of some subunits around a focus agenda towards 2022. We've already done some things in that regards already. We've already started some things in motion. Well, we created these new 4 program areas. I think that's going to be a win-win for us all when we think in terms of these new program leaders that will have dual responsibility for research and academics, and hopefully we'll add the extension component to that. I think that's going to be a win-win for all. What is that designed to do? What that says is that what? Okay, we need to understand what each other's doing. We need to be talking more with each other. We need to be planning more with each other such that we understand what it is we do on a day-to-day basis instead of working in isolation. Sometimes we work in isolation, okay? And that facilitate the improvements of our infrastructure, protocols and things like the infrastructure. I want to talk a little bit particularly relate to the farmer. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then our partnerships and collaboration. These are the 4 things I want to talk about. But there's a conceptual relationship with that too. Synergistic relationships, that's teaching, research, and extension. Okay, that puts it together. I have another one I call this my ideal model for cooperation. This is an old model. Some of you have seen this one before. Because I used to work, I was in ESCOP for a number of years, and I served on a partnership committee. I served on a partnership committee where we had on this partnership committee research, extension, and academic programs. In the COPs, some of you might, at least Dean would understand, a few of you would understand the COPs. You know, you got SCOP, ECOP, ACOP, ICOP, and all these COPs. And many times they come to the meeting, SCOP go off over here, and SCOP stands for the Experimental Station Committee on Policy. And I chaired that committee back in the early 2000s. And then ICOP, international programs, ACOP, academic program, and then you've got the, extension. ECOP. All of them, but not working together. So we created what we call a partnership committee. Said, let's come together. And at that time, this is not my idea, but one of my colleagues, Bruce Beatty, at that time was at the University of Arizona. I did too, son. He came over with this. He called this the ideal model of cooperation. Now, being a little facetious. We look at the mission for research, we look at the mission for extension, and we look at the mission for academic program. That's fine and dandy. But if we operate in our silos and we operate separately from each other, how is that an ideal model for cooperation? We're not talking to each other. There's no cross-integration. There's no fertilization. There's nothing there that brings us together such that we understand how we each function and how we can benefit by being in conjunction with each other. So I put it this way. So I like to put it this way. Okay, understand this. Joining forces to enhance effectiveness. This is how I think we need to be. The 3 units. Research, that's CARC and the rest of the research programs they would have. Extension, that's CEP and the rest of the programs that they have in our academic program. But I want to show you the piece that we call that overlap right here. I call that my commonality of purpose. I think the more we work together, we'll realize we have the same goals and aspirations. The problems are the same. We just have a different job. We think about a job, we think about this, and we think about how it all works together. I like team sports. I don't know if you like team sports. I like team sports. I don't always like some of the things I see in current team sports, I played a little bit of team sports in my days, but we think about trying to have a team sport and you're not working together on the team. That's a recipe for disaster. If anybody that ever play team sports, when you're on a team sport, you got to help each other out, particularly if you're playing football. Running back can't run if the guys don't block. Quarterback can't get the pass off if those big linemen don't keep those guys off because he's going to get sacked every time. Think about trying to do research and you don't know what the issues or concerns are that you're trying to address. When we think about there's a commonality or purpose in there, and to think about what we're trying to do, we're trying to enhance lives of people out there that we serve from a research perspective, or from an extension perspective, or from an academic perspective. Well, we want to make it that. And then we're going to talk about some subunits. We've already kind of talked about this a little bit, how we're going to realign some of our subunits. You know, we went from animal system, food system, natural resources, plant system, and we've got new names now. We've got, you know, social system became basically human sciences. Natural resources and plant system merged together. Animal and food system, including dietetics and nutrition. We put all those together. I think that's a better fit for what we're going to do. If we think about doing that, then, you know, that's going to put us together in a better working relationship to do that. And then we'll start to think about in terms of what we're doing, in terms of our student-led garden and things like that on the farm. This basically gets down to what I call positioning at the farm. I want to back up here for just a second and go find the right slide. But let's talk about the garden and other programs at the farm. What I wanted to talk about was the resources. We've already talked about some of those. Let me just talk about greenhouses. I'll go this way, then I'll come back to that. Facilitate the improvement of our infrastructure. Greenhouses. We added the 2 new ones in 2020. They're fully capacity. They're fully organized. We're doing some renovation as we speak on the 2 old ones there. That's going to improve our facility, but that's not nearly what we need. That's not nearly what we need. We're in negotiation. We're hoping that we're going to get some private sector support to expand that operation. We need more. That's great visibility. We get a lot of mileage. We're getting a lot of mileage. We're becoming well known in the hemp sector with what we're doing with the hemp research, but that's not nearly enough. We need to continue to grow that program. We need to expand capacity. We need to add more labs. We need office space and things like that. But that's bringing a lot of visibility to what we're doing. The Goat Center, a lot going on there. Can't see it. But Bill and I have had a lot of discussions. We talked about, you know, where do we see the Goat Center? What do we want to do? You know, it was the first when it opened. When we opened the Goat Center, we were the international Goat Center. People from around the world used to come here for us. But how do we get to where we are? We want to bring it back. We said the ag is back. So let's say the Goat Center is back. We take from our national thing, we're going to build back better. We want to build it back better. Not necessarily the same focus that we had before, but we're going to bring it back better. We're in the process of upgrading the wastewater system. We're renovating the milk parlor so we can do processing of our milk. We're doing the growth chamber expansion, construction of the vet treatment facility, lab renovations, and general facilities upgrade. We're going to turn that back into a first class facility, bring it back to the status that we used to have. The new meats lab. What can we say about that? Hear a lot about the new meats lab. We're very close to have some staffing. You know, one of the things now, we just don't have staff. Been difficult. We think we're very close to probably having a person identified. That'll probably be our first hire that's going to be going in there soon. So that's going to enhance our capability. We can get the labs open. We've already pretty much have the protocols in place to start with some what I call soft opening with classes. Our meat science classes will be meeting in there this fall, doing some lab work in there, and then we'll grow that. A few things to do. But we're looking at that. We're looking at, you know, full opening, you know, later this fall once we get a scientist on board that's going to head up that lab. But this is an external, internal picture of that. But think of that facility and think of what it might do. And every day I'm imagining what it might do. I spoke to a colleague of mine at a meeting that I attended, you know, back early this summer. That has led to a series of meetings. The most recent one was last Friday. Called me last Friday, said, guess what? I've got some more news, good news. Have identified a company. Of course, you know that we're looking to find a company that's going to help sponsor that facility. And I think right now we've got at least 2 or 3 that have companies that have expressed some interest in that for naming rights or supporting rights and things like that. So that's going to be a great facility. That's going to be a great win-win for the College of Ag. That's going to be a great win for our research, academic, and extension program and as it comes online. The Poultry Center, we had a soft opening last year. Facility, we pretty much completed all the renovation projects that we were doing. We had a soft opening. We hired a facilities coordinator on board that's pretty much inside the lab, been there for most of the year now. The soft opening that we had last year, we smoked some turkeys around Thanksgiving, and we're getting ready to do that. We're in the process of hiring some additional. We need a poultry science specialist to go in there that's going to head up that facility. With job announcement is already out. If you know anybody looking, please send them our way. And then, of course, our labs are also ready to go in terms of the protocols in place for the teachers for this fall. I think, our students will be going there to do some of their laboratory. The farm. The third part of that was, how can we use the farm as a platform? Here we are, almost 800 acres, 788 acre farm. Bill and Barra Daniels Farm and Ranch. How do we use that as a platform? If you drive out and look, you see what it is. It's not what it needs to be. It's not what we desire it to be. And we'll have to improve that. We're in the process of hiring additional personnel, which one gives us a bigger labor pool so we can start doing the things, just things. We think about the possibilities of what we could do, okay, with respect to where we are. There's a lot of possibility, unended. We think about what we might do with that farm, okay? But, back in the day, early on when we were here before, it was mostly cattle. We have less than 100 now. We used to do corn. We used to do cattle and things like that. But how about some high dollar value enterprises that we're looking at now compared to those? What are some things that we're dreaming? We don't have a monopoly on ideas. We're looking for ideas to talk about how we might do that. But this farm, it's the integrated farm. It's part of our infrastructure. It's the biggest lab on campus. 800 acres almost. Think about how big that is. Could it serve agriculture at all its needs? Could it serve beyond that? Think about other colleges on campus that would collaborate, biology and those different departments that might want to take advantage of the resources that we have on the farm. This is what it looks like on the map. That's just an aerial photo. That photo of it is called, right there you see us to build, pretty much that's about what we call the back 90 back here. And this is the farm here, it doesn't look like much, but carved up. I didn't draw this map, but this was done a couple of years ago by Jamie Madzik before she left. So to give you an idea of what might be. But when we think in terms of what just might be, you see, these are just numbers on paper. Just give you an idea of how big these spaces are and just what this might be. A lot of potential here. There's a lot of untapped potential here, and we're trying to create that. This back here, this is encompassed part of the Goat Center, the hay meadows and things back here. We had planned this year, but COVID and the loss of personnel didn't allow us to do that. Do some co-grazing with cattle and goats. That's what those were designed for. We didn't get to it this year, but it's still on the book. We're developing the flex tower back here. We're going to expand that greatly next year. Round Ray in the room. I believe next year we're talking about probably expanding that to at least 50 acres so it can do a bigger margin. If you've seen his pictures this year, that's coming along. But I think that serves as a platform. The questions I get a lot from the students, a lot is about the farm. How can we get out to the farm and get more hands-on? We need to create the opportunity. However, we think about the volunteer opportunities that we have for students out here. And I was telling the students this morning when I met with the students, the opportunity is there, but don't expect to get paid for everything you do. Some things you're just going to have to do. You're going to have to come out and maybe do some volunteer labor. That's how you learn. If you only come in, if we pay you, then probably you're not going to learn as much. You're not going to appreciate it because you're looking for a paycheck, and we can't afford to pay all of it. But what if you just come out and want to lend a hand, want to learn some things, and get involved and learn some things? We've had some limitations with COVID. Understand that that's held us back some because we had the student-led garden a couple years ago. That was really going. We had the student-led garden. We were in the midst of creating the farmers market, which was an extension of that. We had to pull back on that last year, and we're probably still restricted on that. We don't want to go too fast, but the opportunity is there. But the student-led garden has to be more than that little garden plot that you see that we call the garden. It's more to it than that. It's the whole farm. Why not the whole farm? Why not the poacher center, part of that being part of the student-led garden? I know it doesn't meet the definition of what we call a garden, but think about it. How about it? We maybe need to change the name. We grow it into something else. We talk about the farm, the Bill and Barry Daniel Farm as a platform for research, as a platform for teaching, and a platform for outreach. We think about demonstration. Had a call just last Friday from a clientele, well, actually, it's a former employee. They wanted to do some variety demonstration plot. I said, yeah, bring it on. Want to do some things. So we're going to do some work there this fall on using that farm out here as a show and tell. And then the partnerships beyond that. This is a sample of some things in the works already. Just to give you a sample of what we're doing, most of these are hemp related, but this is not even nearly close to a complete list of companies and organizations that have been calling and emailing us almost on a day-to-day basis. Texas Department of Agriculture, we've always maintained a good relationship with them for all of the 40 plus years that I've been here. They were responsible for making sure that we were one of the first in lines back in 2020 to get the hemp license to do the agreement. So with that, Pharmacopoeia, Eden Farms, we're looking at those. We have a meeting set up for them, I believe, later this week. We're back at the door talking to them. They're into the vertical growing. They're also into the hemp. Tech Hemp Harvesters Association, Can Farms, Hemp Lines. These are the samples. Then I put down that USDA various agencies. We need to look beyond NEFA for support. Back in the day, we were engaged. Recently, reached out to a contact. Actually, they reached out to me. A contact reached out to me early this summer and said, we'd like to develop a relationship with some of the 1890 schools. I said, you just call the right one. I said, what is it you want to do? This is the FAS, Foreign Ag Service. We'd like to develop a relationship. We have a little bit of money. We don't have much money, but we have a little kitty of money. If you would write me a small proposal, ask for a little bit of money, we think we can fund you as establish a relationship. So we got together and we did that with Sunil Abadil. We wrote that proposal. Actually, he wrote it. And I just read it to make sure that he spelled and dotted all the I's. But anyway, we got it in, and that's funny. That's going to reestablish a relationship that we had years ago, particularly back, some of you might remember when we had the World Food Program, but things like that. So those opportunities are growing. So when I said other USDA agencies, I mean beyond NEPA, ARS, FAS, AMS, all of those agencies, many of those have funds out there. We just need to reestablish some of those relationships and so forth. CEP, of course, other colleges and departments on the campus. We've got to do more. We got to do more reaching out to those, things like that. And other land-grant universities, not only just the 1890s, but the 1862s as well. One of the things I saw in looking at some proposals, I was on a review panel this summer with NEPA on a big proposal, the $10 million kind. Great lessons I learned from that. And one of the lessons I learned from that, of course, was looking at those proposals and the number of collaborators that they have on each proposal. Great opportunity. If we could just share, align with what our institution up there at Texas A&M University. Texas A&M University has several of those, at least 3 of those in the hopper. I didn't see our name on any of those. And they were looking at issues very close, aligned with what we're doing. Somehow or another, we missed an opportunity there because we've got to build back that relationship that we used to have. So when we're writing proposals, they could write us in for a piece of that. If you can't get the whole hog, just a piece of it. And what I was sort of disappointed in that very few of the 1890s at all had that name on any of those proposals. I think all and so maybe 1 or 2 that had that name on the proposal. What a great opportunity that is, and we can leverage what we do. So how do we get there? You heard me talk about earlier a bold transformation, okay, that's going to take some bold action. We got to get out of the box. We got to think about it. We got to embrace some change. Okay, we keep doing what we're always doing and not getting what we wanted. What makes you think we're going to have? We got to make some change. We need to make change. We got to embrace change. We got to work together for the common good. We talked about that in the meeting this morning with the search committee. Talk about, how do we do that? Engage more in strategic planning. We don't write a plan. We can't just write a strategic plan and put it on the shelf. I'm sorry. It's an ongoing, it's a continuous process. Okay, and we get away from that sometimes. Well, we got a 5-year plan. And one of the things that opened my eyes to a lot of things that I hadn't seen during our recent staff conference back in August, where guess what? We were reviewing the strategic plan for the university. I went back and got me a copy and started reading it and realized there are a lot of things in there. I probably remembered it 5 or 10 years ago, but I hadn't looked at it recently because a lot of those things change. But the more they change, the more the same things remain the same. Revitalize our programs, engage in more integrated activities with extension and teaching. We've already talked about that. When we write proposals, we need to invite each other to the table. We need to invite each other to the table, not the same little old 2 or 3 that we've been working with. We need to reach out and reach across the aisle. Book that I have in my office. It talks about this guy's name Patrick. He talks about collaborate or perish. Collaborate or perish. We live in a society today where that's important. We need to collaborate more. Address staffing needs, address facilities needs, equipment needs, all in the context of our fiscal realities. We all can help raise that bar in terms of what we can contribute. I came up in an era where we didn't have any resources, so one of the first things, and I was sharing earlier, when I started, I wasn't giving any money. There was no startup package. So I was told that if you want to do research, you got to work your way from some of these courses. So I was pointed the way we've got to do that. So we've all got to do that, deal with the fiscal realities. We can't get everything, and we can't give you everything. So some things, if you're going to be a part of the team, you need to get for yourself. Build alliances and partnerships. I was talking about that. Environmental impacts, we've talked about that. Globalization, global issues. We live in a global society, okay? We're not isolated anymore. We got to think about what we're going to do. We got to focus on our mission and purpose, respond to new opportunities as they emerge. We've got to do that. And of course, maintain relevance. We've got to maintain relevance. Is what we're doing relevant, or is it something that we want to do? It's not about you. It's about what are we doing to make life better for the society in the world in which we live. Not necessarily to stack my resume, not necessarily to stack my resume, but we think about relevance. Our former president, Charles Hines, when he was here, he talked about relevance. Our current president, Ruth Simmons, in her remarks, talk about relevancy. We've got to be relevant in everything we do because it's got to make a difference. Our goal, our mission, is to be able to impact the lives of so many people. So I'm going to close with that. I'm not sure how much time I had, but those are a few remarks. I'll stop now and entertain any questions that you might have.
Anybody has any question for Dr. Parks? Also, I want to remind our colleagues who are joining us online, they can ask questions, and I will receive them if they ask questions. So you also can ask questions too. So if you don't ask questions, we're going to ask you questions.
I say, if you don't have a question, I'll ask you one.
Let me ask you one more question. I mean, to just break the ice here. So, can you elaborate? We have one? Oh, okay. Thank you for saving.
Dr. Parks.
I know you always have one. Go ahead.
I knew everything that you said about yourself, except that you had kept your military veteran a secret. I didn't know that you served. That was new information to me.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question here online. You have been the research director on previous occasions. If given this position again, what will you do definitely as the new associate director to positively impact CARC and the college to improve the university standing among other 1890 university and the nation? And this was asked by Dr. Sharon McQueenie.
Good question. Thank you for asking that question. You know, experience, for one. What I did before, probably a lot different than what I would like to see done now. I think we've advanced differently. The whole climate, the whole environment in which we operate today is significantly different than the way we operated when I was in my previous time as the research director. It was not so much back then talked about collaboration. It was not so much back then talks about impact and being relevant. Our focus back then was probably more in terms of individual scientists and what we did indivisibly. So when we think about then, you come in the CARC and you just go down it, you see a note on the door, and that's what this scientist was doing. We had very little collaboration. In the modern context, I think we need to get away from that. I think of it in terms of this way. A story that I like to share. If you've ever had a class with me, you know I got a story about everything. So get used to my storytelling. I've got a story to tell about everything. Think about the automobile. Here we go. Back in the days of the muscle cars, when General Motors and Ford, when all of the engineers primarily were men, and they were building cars with men. You remember they were loud mufflers and a lot of power and things like that. They had no soft touch, so to speak, because they were all men engineers. And the women complained and said, hey, I don't like driving that kind of car. So they brought in some women and they started saying, let's put a soft touch. Let's put a different perspective on it. And so they built a car. And when you think about the cars that we have now, the things that they have in a car. I'm always amazed that, even my wife, my preference of a car is a truck still. I don't have one, but I would rather have a truck with loud mufflers and the stick transmission. But I can't do that because what? She likes the soft touch. Think about our research and think about what we do. Think about the issue of climate change. That is not a one-person job. One person don't have all the answers to all that. Think about food security and things like that. It takes a team to address some of these questions. And we think about that is that, so from our perspective now is we've got to promote teamwork, probably more so than we did. We got teamwork means collaboration, which means different disciplines coming together to address a problem. I always say, how do we fix a problem? One person can't probably do it. You have a part of the answer, but somebody else have a different answer, bring a different perspective. So my focus now would be more towards building teams as opposed to building individuals.
Any other question for our speaker?
Dr. Parks, thank you for your presentation. And as you know, I am an employee of CEP, and I've been employed with CEP probably about 4 years now. And I constantly hear how Clark and CEP work together. And my question to you is, how do you envision CEP and Clark moving forward and working together?
When you create opportunities and you build teams around focus areas and topical issues, I think most problems need to be addressed from the context. There's different ideas and there's the viewpoints with each one. Uh, I think each one of us brings something different to the table. I think collectively, when you go back to what I had about commonality of purpose around almost every issue that we can think of, there's more than one side to the story. And I think we could all elevate ourselves, elevate our program, elevate the stature of our programs. We just spend a little more time working together. I think it has to be intentional and strategic. It's not just going to happen. I think my role as a director, I've got to help facilitate that process. I've got to help make that happen. We've got to create the environment. We've got to create the opportunity such that we get people together so they get to know each other together, so we can work together and brainstorm the issues and concerns that are out there, so that we're talking with each other more, not necessarily talking about each other, okay? And such that we can then understand from a perspective, what are the issues? What are the research part of this? And what is the extension part of this? And what is the academic portion of this? And how, when all three of those converge together, then we have a better chance of addressing the problem or issue that we're trying to address.
We have some time for one more question at least. Looks like we need to ask you a question, guys. So he proposed several things there. I mean, I see lots of discussion that can be okay. Thank you, Dr. Ray.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to hear your strategy or vision to double in 5, both in enrollment and external grants. Double in 5, how can you get it? How can we get it?
Double?
Double in 5 that we have.
That's the dean's vision. Well,
Yeah,
anyway, I'm kidding.
but-
I'm kidding. I'll answer that. No, I'll answer that. I can answer that. How can I make it? How can I make it happen? Let's talk about research grants. Let's just stay right there. I pulled the data recently. Got it on my desk. The number of grant proposals we've written in the last year, last 2 years, last 3 years. The amount of funding that we brought in the last 2 years. Just had a conversation with Chris this morning. He just reinforced what I already knew. Sort of embarrassing, but I'm going to say it. We're not taking advantage of not even the low-hanging fruit. We're not taking advantage of what I call even the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. Some of these proposals are so easy to get, and we're not even taking advantage of that. We haven't gotten to the hard ones yet. But how do we do that? It's going to take some deliberate action. What I see is that from now on, starting today, one is I'm going to work closer with the research office. And when I see these, I'm going to call some people. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to call some. I'm going to have to call some people in. Say, hey, Here's an opportunity. Let's work on this. Let's not pass this opportunity. What I'm seeing now is like water on a duck's back. Emails come, we send them out, and we hear nothing. We have to change that. And that starts with me. I believe with that, from the research granting part, we could double in less than 5. I believe we can double in the next year. I believe in 2021 or 22, by this time a year from now, I believe we could easily double what we did this year. That's not even a stretch from my perspective. Same thing with publications. Are we participating in our society meetings? Are we going? Are we submitting papers? Some, I mean, across the board collectively. I see some are doing very well, some are not. Why aren't we? We got to create an incentive. We got to create a system of monitoring and keeping tabs on what's going on. That has to happen because I think we're sitting and we're not performing at nearly the level that we could. Doubling in 5 across the board, in my opinion, that's easy to do. I think we can double grants and publications from what we are now, starting from today, starting from this year or last year. I believe we can double that in 12 months, not 5 years. I don't think it takes that long. Building the partnerships that I talked about. Serving on that panel this summer opened my eyes. And I said, I've got some notes. I know I'm not supposed to, but it gave me an idea. You know what? If we partnership with some of these 1862s, they're asking for 10 million. If we just got a piece of it, maybe we got $1 million cut, and I think we're very capable of getting $1 million cut. Let's just say we take that for starters. I believe we could do that. But I think we're gonna have to be the aggressor. We're gonna have to assert ourselves. And I think we can get there. So from the research standpoint, research output, grants and publications, I think that's easily doable within the 5 years.
I think if we don't, we would like to thank our good interview for our candidates. We really appreciate if you give us your feedback on the 4 candidates. We have forms here, also available online with the link to available in the Outlook invite for those seminars. So please, put in your input in evaluating these candidates. Thanks.
This is the last question I have for you all. This is my question to you. Take a look. Give me your feedback.
Thank you, Dr.
Your feedback